Do not make another important decision from the same fog that delayed the last one. Chosen one, that is the emergency. Not a threat, not a prediction that something terrible is about to happen. The emergency is that you can lose another month asking for an answer when the deeper problem is no longer the answer. It is the receiver. Think about the decision you keep reopening. You know the one. You have prayed about it. You have analyzed it. You have imagined both outcomes. Then you walked away, only to return days later and begin the same cycle again. You may have called that patience. Sometimes it is. But sometimes waiting becomes a hiding place for a mind that no longer trusts itself to choose. That is how people become late, without ever choosing delay. They do not wake up and decide to waste a season. They postpone one conversation, one application, one boundary, one honest move. Then another week passes. The cost stays invisible because nothing dramatic happens. But the unfinished decision keeps taking space inside the mind. First, you will understand why a person can have more insight than ever and still feel less certain. Second, you will see what may have changed between the quick mind you remember and the overloaded mind you experience now. Third, you will have a practical way to stop waiting for perfect clarity before you move. Notice what happens when the task is small. You can choose a meal. You can answer a simple message. You can spend 40 minutes reading things that do not matter very much. Yet when you sit down to handle the decision that could actually change something, your energy drops. Your mind scatters. 5 possibilities appear, then 10. That pattern is not automatically laziness. It may be what I call the decision lag. It is the distance between recognizing what matters and organizing enough inner clarity to act on it. The cruel part is that the more you blame yourself for the lag, the more pressure you add to the same system you are asking to become clear. So no, I am not going to tell you that you ruined your future. I am telling you something more useful. There is still a gap. A gap has an address, and something with an address can be worked on. Late is no longer a sentence. Late becomes information about where movement stopped. Chosen one, look at one unfinished decision in your life, not 10. 1. The goal is to stop pretending. It is not consuming attention. When the mind keeps reopening the same unresolved question, it pays for that question every day with focus, energy, and emotional space. This is why more information can become dangerous. Searching feels responsible. Another opinion feels safe. But if the real problem is not missing information, every new answer can create another branch, another possibility, another reason to delay. You become more informed and less able to move. That is the trap. If you recognize that gap in yourself, mark this moment with the words, "I hear the call." Naming the pattern makes it visible, and visible patterns can change. The next thing we need to uncover is why some spiritually aware people become trapped inside endless preparation. If this were simply procrastination, more discipline would already have fixed it. So, what are we actually dealing with? Chosen one. The first breakthrough is simple, but it can change the way you read your own behavior. The unfinished decision is not sitting quietly in the background. It keeps asking for attention. Every time you reopen it, your mind has to reconstruct the same possibilities, the same fears, and the same imagined outcomes. A person can be deeply responsible and still remain trapped in repetition. The hidden mechanism is this. An unresolved decision keeps creating unfinished mental work. Your attention returns to it when you wake up, when you drive, when the room becomes quiet, and when another opportunity reminds you of what you still have not chosen. This is the decision lag. You know what matters, but knowing has not yet become movement. Then searching begins to imitate progress. You watch more. You ask more people. You collect more opinions. You create another list. Each new piece of information feels useful for a moment, but it can also give uncertainty one more place to hide. Here is the reframe. You may not need more answers. You may need to know which unanswered question would actually change your choice. That distinction matters. If a new fact would genuinely alter the decision, find it. But if another hour of searching will only soothe the discomfort of choosing, call that what it is. I want you to run a simple audit. Bring one unfinished decision to mind. Then ask 3 questions. What decision keeps reopening? What information would genuinely change it? What information am I collecting only because choosing feels uncomfortable? This is where discernment becomes practical. A wise person does not act without enough information, but a wise person also notices when enough has quietly become endless. There is a difference between responsible patience and permanent postponement. One protects a good decision. The other protects you from the feeling of making one. You do not need infinite certainty. You need sufficient clarity. That sentence matters because many important choices never become perfectly safe. Clarity does not remove every consequence. It tells you which consequence you are willing to face. Now notice what happens in your body when you think about the decision. Maybe your jaw tightens. Maybe your breathing becomes shallow. Maybe your shoulders rise. The body often registers unfinished pressure before the mind admits it. Return agency to yourself here. Choose one action that does not require the whole future to be solved. Send the email. Write the first paragraph. Ask for the meeting. Research the one fact that truly matters. Put the boundary into one sentence. A small, honest move can produce information that endless thinking never will. If this part is landing, use the words "enough information." Not because information is bad, because there comes a point when gathering stops serving clarity and starts serving avoidance. Recognizing that point is one of the cleanest forms of self-respect. But there is a deeper problem. Some people reach sufficient clarity and still cannot feel clear. They understand the facts. They know the likely next step. Yet something inside remains crowded, distant, or divided. That is where the next breakthrough begins, because the problem may no longer be the message. It may be the receiver. Chosen one. This is where the problem changes shape. You can have enough information and still feel unable to trust what you know. Yet when the moment comes to act, the signal feels weak, scattered, or strangely far away. You may have told yourself that your intuition is gone. But there is another possibility. The condition of the receiver may be affecting how clearly that message lands. I call this the receiver gap. A clear signal can still feel unclear when the system receiving it is overloaded. The problem is that too much is competing for the same attention. That is what many people experience internally. One thought says move, another says wait. One old fear asks for proof. Then the mind tries to honor every voice at the same time. The result is not deeper wisdom. The result is fragmentation. And after enough repetition, that fragmented state can begin to feel normal. This matters because spiritually sensitive people often respond to fragmentation by searching for a stronger signal. They ask for another sign. They consume another message. But a stronger signal does not always solve an overloaded receiver. The word metanoia is often translated as a change of mind, a turning in how something is perceived. That idea matters here. Real change is not always about adding more. Sometimes it begins when the mind stops carrying every possibility as equally urgent. Notice your body for a moment. Is your forehead tight? Is your jaw holding pressure? Are your shoulders slightly raised? Is your breathing shallow without you noticing? They simply remind you that mental overload often has a physical texture. Now, imagine tomorrow morning. The room is the same. Your responsibilities are the same. Your phone still has messages, but one thing is different. You know the first move, and you are not reopening the entire future before taking it. That is the beginning of restored clarity. Not certainty about everything, not control over every outcome, just enough internal order for one honest signal to become one honest action. There is also a reason some of you remember having a different kind of mind when you were younger. You learned faster. You imagined more freely. You moved from curiosity to action without building a courtroom around every choice. For now, do not romanticize the past. Childhood had confusion too. The point is not that everything was better then. The point is that many adults gradually lose access to certain forms of flexible attention, curiosity, and creative integration as stress, routine, and constant input accumulate. If this feels familiar, use the words "I receive" clearly. Let that phrase mean something practical. Less noise, fewer open loops, more honest attention. A clearer distinction between what matters now and what can wait. And hold one question as we move forward. Why do so many adults remember a sharper, more curious version of themselves while accepting mental fog as if it was simply the price of getting older? The answer will lead us toward the next layer, and eventually toward a research connection that gives the idea of the receiver a much more literal meaning. Chosen one, there was a version of you who moved through the world with less hesitation. You asked questions because curiosity felt natural. You imagined strange possibilities. You learned by touching, testing, failing, and trying again. Then life became louder. Responsibilities grew. Pressure became normal. You learned to filter yourself before speaking. You learned to measure risk before moving. You learned to stay useful, careful, productive, and controlled. None of that makes you weak. But over time, a mind can become skilled at protection and poor at exploration. I call this the stolen default. Not because someone literally stole your mind, but because the way you naturally used attention, curiosity, and imagination can become buried under years of stress, routine, and constant input. What once felt spontaneous begins to feel inaccessible. This is why some adults say, "I used to be sharper." Others say, "I used to have ideas all the time." Some remember learning quickly, creating without permission, or seeing connections that felt obvious then and distant now. The point is not to worship childhood. The point is to notice that certain capacities can become less available when the system is overloaded. And here is where this becomes important for your delay. If your mind has learned to keep every possibility open, every risk active, and every unfinished question alive, then clarity has to fight through a crowded room. You may call that maturity. Sometimes it is, but sometimes maturity has become overprotection. Chosen one, this is not an invitation to become reckless. It is an invitation to recover flexibility, the ability to see more than fear, the ability to let one decision be one decision, the ability to explore without making every step a verdict on your entire future. Researchers and clinicians have spent years exploring how different parts of the brain cooperate during attention, creativity, integration, and complex decision-making. Later, I am going to return to one specific line of research because it gives the idea of the receiver a more literal meaning. I am not naming the tool yet. I am not asking you to believe anything yet. I only want you to hold one question. What if part of what you have been calling spiritual delay is being intensified by the condition of the mind trying to receive direction? That question matters because the solution changes when the mechanism changes. If the problem is laziness, force may help. If the problem is missing information, research may help. But if the problem is fragmented receiving, then adding more pressure or more information can make the experience worse. Most people respond to fog by pushing harder. Chosen one, you are being asked to look deeper. You are still here because you are willing to examine the mechanism before blaming your character. If that is you, mark this moment with the words, "I receive clearly." Let those words mean less internal noise, fewer unnecessary loops, and a willingness to notice what your mind is carrying. Because the next trap is more dangerous. Spiritually serious people often call it wisdom. They keep waiting, checking, confirming, and preparing. And because the language sounds responsible, they rarely notice the exact moment discernment turns into delay. Chosen one. Discernment is sacred when it helps you see clearly, but discernment becomes delay when it is used to avoid the discomfort of choosing. There are three kinds of waiting. The first is healthy waiting, because information is incomplete. You do not have the facts yet, so you pause. The second is emotional waiting, because certainty feels safer than responsibility. The third is overloaded waiting, when every option feels equally dangerous, because the mind is carrying too much at once. And if you do not know which one you are living in, you can spend months calling postponement discernment. This is why more spiritual language does not automatically create more clarity. You can pray sincerely and still avoid a conversation. You can journal honestly and still reopen the same decision tomorrow. You can meditate, plan, study, and prepare, while the real issue remains untouched. Think about Moses standing before a threshold he did not create. He could not control every consequence waiting on the other side. He still had to respond to what was clear enough for the next step. Faith is not the absence of uncertainty. It is movement without demanding that uncertainty disappear first. Notice your body now. Is your brow tight? Is your jaw holding pressure? Are your shoulders raised? Is your breath shallow? Do not force anything to change. Simply notice which decision your body tightens around when you bring it to mind. Now, ask yourself something uncomfortable. Am I waiting because I truly need information, or because I want a guarantee that no honest decision can give me? That question can separate wisdom from fear faster than another hour of searching. If the answer is that information is missing, identify the exact fact you need. Go get that fact. If the answer is that certainty is missing, understand that certainty may never arrive in the form you are demanding. And if the answer is overload, then the next step is not more input. It is reducing what the receiver has to carry. This is where many people who have tried everything become discouraged. They have prayed, they have written pages of notes, they have listened to teachings, they have made plans, broken plans, and made new ones. So when someone suggests one more practice, resistance rises immediately. That resistance makes sense. The goal here is not to add another ritual to an already crowded life. The goal is to recognize whether the condition in which you are trying to decide is supporting clarity or fighting it. Chosen one, say, I release the delay if this distinction is becoming clear. You are not releasing responsibility. You are releasing the demand for perfect certainty. You are releasing the habit of reopening decisions simply because choosing makes you vulnerable to an outcome. There is still one deeper layer. Earlier, I asked you to hold a question about the receiver. I told you that researchers have explored how different parts of the brain cooperate during attention and integration. We are close to closing that loop. But before we do, remember the path that brought us here. The decision lag showed you where knowing stopped becoming movement. The receiver gap showed you why a clear message can feel unclear in an overloaded system. The stolen default showed you that capacities can become less available without disappearing forever. Now the question changes. If the receiver can become fragmented, can the condition of that receiver be supported? That is where the next part begins, and where the word receiver stops being only a metaphor. Chosen one, we are ready to close the loop that has been open since earlier. I waited because a solution means very little until the problem has an address. You now know the shape of that problem. So, here is the missing piece. Why does insight sometimes remain insight instead of becoming movement? Sometimes the state of the system doing the receiving deserves attention. More information does not automatically create more clarity. Reduce noise, support integration, and make one clean decision at a time. Clarity is real, but clarity that never reaches action remains unfinished. There is a scientific connection worth understanding. Doctor Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize in 1981 for research involving the specialized functions of the two cerebral hemispheres. That research did not prove a spiritual destiny or any commercial product, but it became part of the foundation later developers used when thinking about hemisphere cooperation and integration. The point is not to turn neuroscience into prophecy. It is to recognize that attention, integration, and decision-making have a physical dimension as well as a personal one. That is why supporting the receiver can be a practical question, not only a spiritual metaphor. According to the creators of the resource I am about to describe, their work focuses on supporting that cooperation. A woman from California described years of fog and the feeling that life was happening to her. She had tried several personal practices but still felt disconnected. According to her account, after using the program consistently, she noticed greater clarity and less internal pressure, and she felt more present in her marriage. A man from Texas reported a different struggle. He carried business responsibilities and family pressure while feeling mentally foggy. According to his account, after using the program he felt sharper and more decisive, and the fog he had stopped noticing began to lift. Those are individual experiences, not guarantees. The resource is called the Genius Switch. It was developed under Dr. Daniel Barone, a neurologist in New York City. According to the product materials, the program uses what the creators call neural sync technology in an 8-minute targeted auditory sequence designed around hemisphere synchronization and whole brain activation. You use headphones, you close your eyes, you listen for 8 minutes a day. The Genius Switch is not for everyone. It is for the chosen one who is willing to stop treating persistent fog as a moral failure and begin addressing clarity in a practical way. It does not make decisions for you, and it does not replace faith, sleep, medical care, discipline, or honest action. The product page references a value as high as $500. The listed price is $49. On the current offer, described in the product materials, the price is $39. It also includes 4 bonuses: a guided visualization, a smart grocery shopping guide, a classic manifestation book, and a 5 habits infographic designed to support daily routines. The product materials also state that buyers receive lifetime access and a money-back guarantee. The creators say the current price may increase. The more important question is whether continuing with the same fog makes sense for you. Urgency should come from clarity, not fear. One warning matters. Similar tracks may appear elsewhere. The product materials state that the verified version is distributed through the official page, not through random copies. If you want to examine it, use the link in the description or the pinned comment and read the details before deciding. If your spirit resonates with what has been described, that path is there. If it does not, keep the framework you already have and use it. The point is not to force a purchase. The point is to stop pretending the receiver never matters. You now understand the mechanism. The door is visible. The next question is what you will do with the clarity you already have. Chosen one, the tool does not make the decision for you. It does not replace prayer. It does not replace judgment. It does not replace sleep, medical care, discipline, or action. A tool can support clarity, but the choice still belongs to you. That matters because support is different from surrendering responsibility. You are not looking for something to live your life for you. You are looking for a clearer state from which you can live it yourself. The deeper work is still yours. The boundary is still yours. The conversation is still yours. So let us return to the practical path. I call it the clean move protocol. First, restore your state. Reduce noise for a few minutes. Put the phone down. Let the nervous system settle. Give your attention one place to stand before you ask it to make an important choice. Second, name one decision. Not your whole future. Not every problem connected to it. One decision. Write it in a single sentence if you need to. If you cannot name the decision clearly, you are probably still carrying several questions as if they were one. Third, reduce the decision to one reversible action. Send the message. Open the document. Ask for the information. Make the appointment. Draft the boundary. A reversible action lowers the pressure because you are no longer demanding that one move solve your entire life. Fourth, set a time. Clarity without a place on the calendar often becomes another good intention. Choose when the action happens. Make it specific enough that your future self does not have to negotiate with it again. Fifth, act before reopening the research. This is where the decision lag usually tries to return. The mind says, maybe one more opinion, maybe one more message, maybe one more night. But if the missing information has already been identified and gathered, another search may only reopen what was ready to close. A clear mind is support. A clear choice is still yours. That distinction protects you from giving your power away to any teacher, tool, product, or promise. Nothing outside you should become an excuse to stop using judgment. Imagine what this could look like in work. You wake up with the same responsibilities, but you know the first meaningful move. You do not spend the morning rearranging tasks to avoid it. You make the call. You send the proposal. You finish the application. You give your best attention to the thing that can actually change something. The same applies to money. Clarity does not guarantee profit. It can help you slow down enough to examine an opportunity, identify risk, and decide without letting panic or fantasy control the process. Better decisions are not magical outcomes. They are simply better decisions. And if the resource described earlier is not affordable, do not turn that into another reason to feel behind. Use what you already have here. Reduce noise. Name one decision. Choose one reversible action. Put it on the calendar. Then act before reopening the loop. You do not have to buy anything to practice that. The framework is yours now. The product is an optional support for people who want to explore it, not a toll gate standing between you and your next honest move. Chosen one. This is where responsibility becomes freeing. You no longer have to solve everything before beginning. You only have to stop rebuilding the same delay every morning. The final question is not whether you understood this. The final question is whether you are willing to stop recreating the same fog tomorrow. Chosen one. Waiting feels harmless when you measure it, one day at a time. One more night does not look dangerous. One more search feels responsible. One more delay feels small. But small postponements can become a season when the same decision keeps returning without movement. Bring that one decision back to mind. Do not bring your whole life with it, just the decision. Let the noise around it fall away for a moment, then complete this sentence silently. The thing I have been postponing is this. Do not explain it. Name it. Now complete a second sentence. The smallest honest action I can take is this. Make that action real enough to recognize. It should be something you can actually do, not a vague promise to become better, stronger, wiser, or more prepared. Maybe the action is an email. Maybe it is a conversation. Maybe it is an application. Maybe it is reviewing one financial number you have avoided. Maybe it is asking one direct question instead of imagining 10 answers. You do not need to repair your whole future tonight. You need to stop abandoning the next honest move. That is how the decision lag begins to close. Not through one heroic leap, but through a clean relationship between what you know and what you do next. This is also where the receiver gap becomes practical. A clearer state gives you room to hear what matters. But once you hear it, movement still belongs to you. No resource can cross that distance on your behalf. If the genius switch is something you believe may support the clarity work we discussed, the official resource is in the description and the pinned comment. You can examine the details there and decide for yourself. Do not choose from panic. Do not choose because you think a product can guarantee your future. Choose only if the mechanism, the 8-minute format, and the current offer make sense for you. The product materials currently describe a price of $39, but your decision should rest on fit, not pressure. And if the answer is no, let no be clean. You still have the clean move protocol. You still have the one decision audit. You still understand the difference between missing information and avoiding the discomfort of choice. The emergency was never a clock in the sky. It was the cost of repeatedly handing tomorrow the same unfinished decision. That cost can stop when the pattern stops. Think of what becomes possible when one open loop finally closes. Attention returns. Emotional space returns. You are no longer arguing with the same question in the background while trying to be present with your work, your family, and yourself. Chosen one, you may be later than you wanted to be. But later is not the same as powerless. You still have a move available now. Small does not mean meaningless. Reversible does not mean weak. Clear does not mean fearless. One declaration remains. It has nothing to do with buying anything. It is about the person who walks out of this message and refuses to make delay an identity. Before we seal this, hold your decision gently. You do not need to force an answer. You only need to recognize the next step that is already honest enough to take. Chosen one, let the final moment become quieter. Let your eyes soften if it is safe to do so. Take one slow breath. You do not need to solve anything right now. You are only creating enough space to notice what clarity feels like when pressure is not shouting over it. Imagine tomorrow morning. The room is familiar. Your responsibilities remain. Your phone still has messages. But one thing is different. You are no longer carrying the same unfinished decision as a cloud over everything else. See yourself remembering the next honest move, not the next 20 moves. 1. Feel what changes when the mind does not reopen the entire future. Before breakfast, your jaw can soften, your shoulders can lower. Your breath can become deeper because the decision no longer needs to occupy every corner of your attention. This is not a new destiny appearing from nowhere. It is less internal division. It is the receiver gap becoming smaller. It is the decision lag losing its grip. It is the stolen default, giving way to a mind that can become curious and responsive again. Take another breath. As you breathe out, let the word forward rest in your mind. Do not force it. Let it become an anchor. Forward does not mean reckless. Forward does not mean perfect. Forward means meeting the next honest step without demanding control over every step after it. Say this within yourself. I am not abandoned. I am not condemned by delay. I can become clear. I can choose honestly. I can move with wisdom. I can begin from here. I do not need perfect certainty to take a responsible step. I do not need another 100 answers when the next action is already visible. I can honor caution without worshipping fear. I can receive guidance without turning guidance into endless preparation. Chosen one, if this is the decision you are making now, mark it with the words, I move forward. Let those words represent action. Let them mean that tomorrow will not receive the same unresolved promise without one honest attempt from you. And now we can answer the question that opened this message. Are you too late? You may be later than you wanted. You may wish you had seen the pattern sooner, but the time already lost does not decide what happens with the clarity available now. You are not the person who waits forever for perfect certainty. You are the person who receives clearly, chooses honestly, and moves when the next step is yours. Carry one word with you. Forward. Carry one decision. Carry one honest move. Let tomorrow meet a version of you who no longer mistakes, endless waiting for wisdom. You may be late, but you are here. And what matters now is what you do with what you can finally see.